Good morning. I am Peter Groffman, and I am a scientist at the Cary Institute of Ecosystem Studies, and I'm very glad to be with you here this morning. I am what they call a microbial ecologist, so I study the little things that live in the soil. I'm a soil microbial ecologist, and so I study the organisms that live in the soil, and I study what they do. And the most important thing that they do is decomposition. And the reason I became interested in soil microbial ecology is when I was a kid, I used to wonder, where do all the leaves go? So I used to wander in the woods near my house, and I saw that every year all these leaves would fall, and there would be this big pile of leaves, and I would have to rake the leaves out of the yard, and there would be a big pile of leaves. And I always wondered, where do the leaves go? And do you all know where they go? All together now. Come on, what's our theme for the week?
Decomposition.
Right, and so decomposition is the most exciting thing that we do in microbial ecology. And whether it's all the leaves that decompose and make the forest grow, or whether it's the residues from crops that decompose and make our crops grow, or whether it's algae in lakes that they decompose and make our lakes healthy. So I'm a microbial ecologist, and I'm very excited that there's a camp where you're talking about decomposition for a whole week, and I think it's very exciting. And so do you all have questions for me?
Yes.
Okay. So who wants to go first? All right. You have to speak right into the microphone.
How many places have you been to study microbiology?
So how many continents are there?
7.
Okay. So has anyone been to all 7 continents?
I've been to 2. I've been to 5.
Okay. So let's say. Oh, so you've been to 5 continents. So what are the 5 continents that you've been to?
Australia, I've been to Asia, I've been to Europe, I've been to South America, and I've been to North America.
Yes. Good. That's where we are. Okay. So those are 5 continents. What are the 2 that he hasn't been to?
Antarctica and Europe.
Africa. Okay, so now many people have been to 6 continents, but what's the 7th where they haven't been a lot? Antarctica. I have been to Antarctica to study soil microbiology in Antarctica, and it's actually a very
Beetle on your neck. God. Giant beetle on your neck.
it's a very Antarctica is a very exciting place to study microbiology because it's the most extreme place on the earth. Let's see what the beetle has to say. All right, so there's a guest appearance from a beetle. So I have been to all 7 continents, and I've been to for my work as a scientist, I've been to all 7 continents. And Antarctica is a very exciting place to go because the organisms that live there, it's very, very difficult for organisms to live there because there's no plants and there's not a lot of sunlight, and so it's a very interesting place. And when we're very interested in studying the extreme limits of life, and we studied that in Antarctica. Anyone else have a question?
Why did you choose microbiology?
Well, when I went into school, it's an area that we know almost nothing about. So, for instance, many people like to study plants, and people have been studying plants for thousands of years because we can observe plants, and we can study them rather kind of easily. And people still do very exciting science on plants. But when I started to become a scientist, our ability to study microorganisms had improved a lot. We had all these new methods. We had fancier microscopes. We had fancier chemical techniques where we could extract the DNA from the soil. And so it was just, when I got to school, it was just super exciting that we had all these new ways that we could learn things that we didn't know before. And that's why that's what drove me into microbiology. And that happens a lot in science. Certain areas of science become more or less exciting because we get some new development. So in paleontology, right? You want to be a paleontologist? So we have these new techniques where we can take a bone and we can do a chemical analysis of the bone and determine how old the bone is. Right? And this is why Calvin is always suffering. He's not selling his Calvinosaurus because they can tell that it's just a piece of a chicken bone from last week or something like that. And so in various fields there are advances, method advances that allow us to do exciting things. Into the microphone.
What would you want to be besides a microbiologist and a fire truck?
Probably the other, to me, exciting thing to be is a teacher, right? So mostly when you're when most scientists spend some time teaching, and so I was before I worked here, I was a college professor, and it's very interesting. So many scientists are both teachers and researchers at the same time, and I think if you're a teacher, you're actually a better researcher, because if you are teaching is actually a very fun thing to do, because you have to organize your thoughts, you have to be able to explain things to people in a big picture. You have to say, well, why is this important? If I talk about soil, I have to tell you why it's important, and so I have to think in a broad picture about why it's important. And so being a teacher, I think, is very, very important to being a good researcher. I also think being a researcher also helps you to be a better teacher, because if you're a researcher, you're constantly learning new things and you're excited about science, and so that makes you a better teacher. So I think most of us like to do teaching and research at the same time, and it's a very good mix. You have a question?
What college did you go to, and which college did you teach at?
So you all are in. So how many grades are we going to go to, right? So we're going to do 12 grades of school, right, through high school, and then college is 4 more grades, so that's grade 16. And then graduate school, right? So I went to graduate school for another 4 years after that, so it was 20 grades, grade 20. And so I went to college through grade 16 at the University of Virginia, and then I went to the University of Georgia to get a PhD. And then after that, I worked at Michigan State University, and then I was a researcher there, and then I was a professor at the University of Rhode Island, and then I came here. So it's a lot of moving around. But now I have a lot of sports teams to root for, right? Because so it's kind of.
When did you start microbiology as a profession?
I didn't start. So when I went to graduate school, so that was in 1980. So I graduated from college in 1980, and then I started graduate school in 1980. So 1980, 1980 was a long time ago, right? So there was no cable TV in 1980. There were no cell phones. There wasn't even a fax machine in 1980. There was color TV, however. But anyways, that's when I started doing microbiology, because I got to graduate school and I wanted to study ecology, and it was everyone was all excited about these new approaches in microbiology, and so that's when I started. And so it's been 30, almost 35 years that I've been doing it for a long time.
Did you ever study anything besides microbiology?
Well, when I was in college, I studied a lot of things, right? And that's one of the really fun things about college, is that you could study almost any subject that you want. So when I was in college, I was interested in science, but I was also really interested in art history. Who wants to study the Middle Ages? One of you wanted to study the Middle Ages. Was it you? Yeah. So I was very interested in ancient art and art from the Middle Ages, and so, but I was a science student, right? And I wasn't, and so my advisor was a scientist, and every year you sit down with your advisor, and your advisor says, well, what courses do you want to take? And I would always say, well, I'd like to take this science course, and I'd like to take this math course, and I'd like to take this art history course. And my advisor would go, art history? You can't take art history. You're supposed to study science. But I was always interested in studying lots of different things, and so I stuck to my guns. And my advisor, he's still unhappy with me 35 years later, but still, I wanted to study lots of other things. Other questions down here? Who hasn't answered this? Pass it down there.
Did you study microbiology in school?
Yes. So I started in college, so you all soon, when you go to junior high school, probably you'll take a biology course, right? Your science course will be all about biology, and you'll do a little bit of microbiology then, and so you'll start to learn about little things that live in the soil. What's the other? Do you know what's the other reason why we really study microbiology? Why do we study microbiology?
To learn
Diseases, right? So what's the most exciting disease in the news today?
I'm trying to think of what it's called.
Lyme's disease is
No, no, no.
Lyme disease is exciting right here.
Ebola?
Right. So Ebola, right? So Ebola is this bad disease, and so lots of people study microbiology because we're interested in diseases. And so when I started studying microbiology in school, it was mostly about diseases and how to kill them, or how to avoid getting them. And that's still a very exciting topic because you can see. So here's Ebola, which is this disease that we don't really know how to stop, and Lyme disease is another example where it's again caused by microorganisms. And when you study microbiology in school, a lot of it is about diseases, and so most people think that bacteria are bad, but and viruses are bad, but they're not necessarily bad, right? Most of them are actually quite good. They help induce decomposition, which is good. A lot of them help you stay healthy in your stomach. They're all kind of gross to think about, but they're not all bad, and so it's important to recognize they're not all bad. I think we have time for one more question. Someone who hasn't, I know you had one. Does anyone who hasn't asked some questions got a question?
How old were you when you started studying microbiology?
Well, so I was 12, right? In 6th grade. 6th grade, how old are you? I guess 12. Yeah. So that's one. So if you think about it, you all have. If someone asks you 50 years, when did you start studying decomposition and microbiology? It was this week here at the Cary Institute. So I think I have to say I really started studying microbiology in grade school, and then in junior high school, and in high school, and in college, and in graduate school, and I'm still studying it today. Because the really fun thing about science is that there's new science happening every day. So next week, I'm going to the annual meeting of the Ecological Society of America. And there's going to be 5,000 ecologists at this meeting, and they're all going to be dressed exactly like me, right? They're all going to be wearing a blue shirt and khaki pants, because that's what scientists wear. But I'm going to go to that meeting for a week, and I'm going to learn hundreds of new things. And that's what's really exciting about being a scientist, is that young people, students, and other scientists are finding out new things all the time. So yes, I started learning about microbiology when I was 12, but I'm still learning about microbiology today. And that's really, to me, why it's really fun to be a scientist. I think that's, so thank you very much.